Hello and welcome back. Toy Thursday with Johnny Tiger on September 30, 2021. To many people, September 30 may not be that big of a deal, but to me, this particular September 30 is a bit of a big deal because we're coming up to October and I do have some interesting plans for Toy Thursday for October leading up to Halloween. Yes, we're going to show some scary action figures. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully, no one is too squeamish. But today, we are going to round off our fantasy action figures with a big bang. October is also going to be a little bit expensive because one of my action figure pre-order shipments coming due, and there is three new pre-order all happening in October that all three of them look very promising, very expensive. So I don't know how much discipline or restraint I'm going to be able to muster up, but it's definitely going to take some nice hard thinking and juggling finances and stuff like that. Yeah, I know. I make it sound very serious, while a lot of people are thinking it's just toys, just action figures. I mean, it's not like you got to plan a trip or something like that. It can't be that crazy. How little do you guys know? And that actually leads to today's subject. You see, most people who don't know action figures, most people who don't collect action figures, see action figures as children's toys. So for those of you that don't really collect or you're not into action figures, if I tell you that an action figure costs $100, your reaction would probably be like, "Whoa, you're kidding me, right? How can any toys be $100? I mean, that's like 4 or 5 meals. Why would anyone spend $100 on one plastic toy? Why indeed? This is actually a really good question. I think a lot of time we as collectors we do question our own sanity when it comes to that particular subject. However, if you have been collecting action figures, if you have collected action figures, or if you have children or friends that collect action figures, then the idea of $100 action figures would not be all that surprising. And you would probably say something like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's nothing. There are action figures out there that cost twice as that and more." Actually, I have seen action figures very big, very detailed action figures, but still, they're still plastic and they're still, to a lot of people, toys. But I have seen action figures that go up to $1,000. If you hop onto eBay and type in Balrog from Lord of the Ring made by NECA, you will see that particular action figure go for sometimes $2 or $3,000. So yes, $100 action figure in the action figure world is it a big deal? Well, it's a little bit expensive, but it is really not that crazy considering how high the price can go for some action figures. So today, I'm going to give you guys a first-hand view of a $100 action figure, or at least one that is in the $100 range. Because if you go online and try to buy it now, uh, the least amount you can pay would be somewhere around $160. And if you go on eBay and try to find this action figure, you will be looking at maybe $400 at least for from some of the sellers. So, but when this guy first came out, he was marketed for $100, and I'm going to show you guys what a $100 action figure looks like. This is a hammer. Yeah, an ordinary hammer from a tool chest. It is nothing special. It is not the magical hammer of the Thunder God or even a weaponized warhammer. It's just a boring, everyday hammer from my tool chest. You probably have one in your tool chest. You probably have one at home. And that is exactly why I'm showing you guys a hammer. Because I need you guys to have a point of reference for comparison for what I'm about to show you. This is also a hammer, but it is not your everyday tool chest hammer. This hammer is depicted as a giant boulder with metallic bands wrapping around it and bolted to a section of tree trunk. It is quite remarkable on its own, especially if we bring the camera in closer. You might even be able to see the magical runes carved onto the boulder, kind of showing you that this is not just your everyday barbaric weapon. This is not just some random dude taking a big rock and secure it to a length of wood and using it to bash people's head in. This thing has magic carved into it. Now, that alone makes it a rather remarkable tool of war, but what is even more remarkable is when you compare it to my everyday boring tool chest hammer. Looking at them side by side, you would be able to see that this toy hammer, this hammer wielded by an action figure, is pretty much the same size as my tool chest hammer. In another word, if this was made with wood and metal, or in this case, wood and rock, if it was made of the real material, I would be able to use it to hammer things, and I would be able to put it in my tool chest, and it would work exactly fine as a regular tool. That is how big this is. Now, of course, because it is a toy or an action figure after all, so it is made of plastic, and to reduce the weight on this impressive weapon, the plastic is hollow inside. But the detail work is quite impressive. The length of the tree trunk, the metal bands around it, the bolts and studs that secure the metal bands, and then the bands that secure the big, magically carved, magically enhanced boulder to the other end of the tree trunk. It's all very fine work on just the weapon of this action figure alone. A weapon that just happened to be as large as a hammer for a regular human hand. So, what kind of character, what kind of action figure is crazy enough to come with a weapon this size? If you have watched The Lord of the Ring, then you would remember that one of the more memorable scenes were the heroes in the mines of Moria with their swords and axes come across the gigantic cave troll, and they have to try to fight this giant beast in a confined space. And later, when not just one, but a group of these giant trolls were breaking down the castle gate with a battering ram. Now, those were very memorable scenes, and for a lot of people, that kind of throws the idea, the image of a troll right out of their head. Because a lot of people, especially people who are not into fantasy books or games or movies, if I ask them, what do you think a troll look like? They're thinking of the cute little hairy, obnoxious but cute, uh, most of the time red-haired guys that being depicted by Disney and those little troll dolls that we had in the 80s and 90s. That's what a lot of people are thinking. Or they're thinking about cyber trolls, the internet trolls, the kind of obnoxious people that go around and just cause trouble for people on the internet. When you say troll, they're usually thinking about either the cute, fuzzy one or the obnoxious ones behind the keyboard. Well, if those are your idea of a troll, then what we have today will be quite a surprise for you. This, my friends, is a troll. Gigantic, stocky, muscular, scaly, with long, pointy ears, a hunched, powerful posture, big tusk coming out of the side of his mouth, and super long arms like the arms of a great ape. This is a troll. This is, you can say this is a fantasy troll. Because for those of us who are into fantasy books, fantasy games, when you say troll, we immediately are thinking something like this. The trolls you see in Harry Potter, the trolls you see in Lord of the Rings, they all basically run along this line, although most of them are not as huge and imposing as this one. But this is not something that just dreamed up for the fantasy genre, even though trolls are pretty much a staple in most fantasy related books and games because they are the lumbering, powerful, mighty, but very stupid cannon fodder for the evil Dark Lord side. If there's any kind of heavy lifting, if there's any castle gates that need to be broken down, any little dwarfs or elves that need to be terrorized, usually troll is the ones that get the job done. The trolls are the muscles, the bronze, the big bullies, the ultimate fighting machine, the tank, the the engine of destruction for the evil side in fantasy books. But they did not get created just for the fantasy genre. This towering beast that is so different from the fuzzy little cute trolls people think of nowadays. This is how trolls were always meant to be. This is the original troll as imagined in the Norse mythology by the Scandinavian Norwegian people. The original troll was supposed to look something like this. Scholars and historians today are still trying to unravel the origin of trolls. How did the mythology get started? How did these scary looking creatures that like to eat human beings came into existence in folklore? As close as anyone can figure, trolls were actually based off of real world creatures. What real world creatures? The theory is that in the early days, when your first group of modern humans first start trekking across what is now known as Europe, they went up north and encountered some extreme weather and really scary big creatures such as woolly mammoths and so on and so on. They also encountered our closest thing to humans' ancestor, some Neanderthals. These Neanderthals looked like us, but there were a lot of features that were different from us. They were bigger, stockier, more muscular. They could perform much more physically intensive things than we could as modern human. These Neanderthals also have sloping forehead, craggy brows, and brutish features, and some of them probably did eat people. So when the modern human explorer went back to where they came from and met other modern humans, they started telling the stories of these humanoid creatures that attacked them and ate them. And these Neanderthals quickly became known as trolls. Gradually, more and more myths and legends got piled on, so trolls started to take on some distinctive characteristics, such as they ate people and they would get turned to stone if they get exposed to sunlight. And since they were one of the primary uh, hunting prey, the primary prey for the thunder god Thor, whom we've looked at before, trolls also had a reputation of being very fearful of lightning. They were very ancient, very old, very big, very hungry, and usually very, very slow. As time went on and Christianity became a thing, Troll suddenly took on a very different connotation and image. In the early days of Christian belief, when the word troll were being used, they no longer conjure up the image of these giant, scaly, muscular, man-eating creatures of ancient time. Trolls became human-like, human-sized. Most of the time, they were just human. The only difference between a human and a troll in the eyes of the church was trolls were any human beings that were not Christian. In another word, troll became the phrase or the word for being the godless ones, which gave birth to the connection between the trolls and the Grendel creature in the Beowulf legend, which we talked about in the very beginning of our fantasy action figure series. Beowulf fought a giant scaly creature called Grendel, and Grendel, by all accounts, looked a lot like what trolls were depicted in the old days. And Grendel also had the reputation of being called the Godless One. So there's a little bit of a crossing over in that case. Later on, as more and more European explorers set forth to explore, discover, and yes, possess, conquer other parts of the world, they came into contact with many other cultures and many other mythological creatures that they had no name for. Many of these were little furry animal creatures, animal spirits, such as in Native American culture, you see a lot of the raccoon and beaver and that kind of deity. So trolls took on a new meaning. Trolls were now a generalized term used to describe most of the little creatures that have no name for in English word. They just call them trolls. See a little weird looking creature. Oh, that's a troll. You see a little cute looking creature. Oh, that's a troll. And then in 19th century, 20th century, to in order to make trolls more child friendly and less scary, they started to take on a lot of cuteness and make them more appealing in children's stories. That is why, in the modern time, a lot of people that think of trolls are thinking of uh, definitely not something like what we're seeing on camera now. Uh, they are thinking of something a heck of a lot cuter. However, to the minds of fantasy book, fantasy game lovers, a troll will always look like how trolls were always meant to be giant man eating brutes that are very scary and very powerful, but also very slow, very stupid. So it perhaps is fitting that we are ending our fantasy series on this giant brute of an action figure. As a lover of fantasy genre and very wacky and crazy action figures, I have been looking for a troll for a very long time. On my shelf, I had warriors and knights and dragons and monsters and werewolves and zombies and vampires. I have a great and vast collection of fantasy related character types, but I didn't have a troll. In 2002, 2003, ToyBiz came out with a troll from the Lord of the Ring movie. But unfortunately, because at the time I was going to college and I wasn't making a lot of extra money for to be spent on action figures, I had to miss out on that one. And then later, there was a troll made in the Harry Potter line, but that one was really poorly made and really wasn't that good looking or fantasy accurate. So I passed that one by too. And then there was a long, long time. No new trolls were being produced. Todd McFarlane made a character in their Viking Spawn line called Berserker the Troll, but that Berserker the Troll did not look like a troll. He just looked like a guy with really regular guy with really bad skin condition. So a properly sized giant mythological troll seemed to be nothing but a fantasy for 10, 15, 20 years. Back in about 2017, the Four Horsemen Studio, the four most talented action figure sculptors and designers that used to work for Todd McFarlane but had since left and start working on their own. In 2017, they released of the first giant troll in their Mythic Legion line. What is the Mythic Legion line? Well, that would take a whole episode on its own to do it justice to talk about Mythic Legion. But suffice to say, Mythic Legion is right now, anyway, right now the most comprehensive, the most original fantasy-based action figures you can find anywhere in the 6, 7 inch scale. Uh, Now, you cannot just walk into a store and buy Mythic Legion action figures because they are only made to pre-order. So whenever they have a new batch of Mythic Legion characters planned, they will go on Kickstarter or GoFundMe and say, okay, this is what we have planned. Who want to buy them? If we get $200,000 pledge, we will go ahead and make them. That's how it's done. So if you don't buy them now, later you have to go online and you have to pay twice the amount of money or 3 times, sometimes 5 times the amount of money if you miss out on the pre-order. This is how crazy it is to collect Mythic Legion. Now, some people will say, well, that's crazy. But that's crazy. I'm not going to pay money before when I'm going to have to wait for a year or 2 years before I get my action figure. That's nuts. And believe me, I thought so too in the beginning. I I was in that camp where I thought, this is crazy. Why would I pay for something that they haven't even made yet? But the Four Horsemen Studio have since made such a reputation for themselves that when they put up a new project, let's say, for example, if they are looking for $200,000, within 2 days they raise over $800,000. That is how many people have been drawn to their action figures, and how many of us are willing to wait for a year, 2 years, because we know the end result will be so good. In 2017, they added the first giant troll to their Mythic Legion lineup. The troll was marketed for $100 each. At the time, I wasn't a big fan of Four Horsemen Studio yet, so I did not buy into that troll. To me, I was more towards the idea I'm not going to spend $100 and buy a figure that I haven't even seen, that I'm not going to see for another year. That's crazy. That's too much. To my chagrin and regret, reviews of the show started popping up on the internet, videos and written reviews and articles, and I realized I made a very big error not buying the troll, and I rushed onto my action figure online stores to try to find one, and of course, by the time they get marketed to the stores, now they are selling for $200 or $300. And again, I did not want to pay that much because I was thinking these trolls are only 12 inches tall. $200 for 12-inch tall figure, that's crazy. No, 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 just no. So I went another 4 or 5 years, 4 years, wishing that I've gotten the troll when it was $100 on the pre-order, kicking myself in the butt for not getting it then. And then fortune smiled upon me. Last year, the Four Horsemen rolled out a new wave of pre-order, and lo and behold, in this wave of pre-order was the second version of the Stone Troll. And this time, without hesitation, I typed in my credit card number and committed to the pre-order. And finally, this beast is here. And today, we're going to take a detailed look at this $100 troll. First and most obvious, how big this troll is. Let me give you guys some number because I did take a ruler and measured him. Standing upright like he is now, he is about 12 inches tall, which really doesn't sound that big considering that we have seen a lot of 12-inch scale giants and other creatures. However, also take into consideration the widest point of his body, so from his forearm to forearm, the widest part of his body measures roughly 8 inches wide, and each one of his long arm is about 11 inches long. Which means if you get this beastie in a pose where the arms are wide to the side, I'm not even going to try because it's not going to be small enough to fit in the frame. You won't be able to see the whole thing. Uh, but if I spread his arm out, we are looking at an arm span of at least 25 to 30 inches. This is huge. This is like I'm not even kidding you. When I got this action figure in my hand, I said to myself, that is cheap. $100 is cheap for this guy. Even if I paid $200, I would still say this is worthwhile because this is one hefty, substantial piece of plastic. And that's only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to why this is a very well made action figure. The stone troll, befitting its name, is covered in rocky, armored-looking scales and protrusions. However, the underside of his body, the inside of the leg, the arm, the underbelly, they are more regular, pinkish-looking skin, and they are leathery and wrinkly like the hide on an elephant. The beast has giant tusk and pointy ear and a pretty long pointed nose. On the hand, it has three fingers, and it's just to show that it is not just a simple animal, it is actually an intelligent, sentient being. It is wearing hammered metal bracers on its forearm, and its midsection is protected by a hammered metal belt with a loincloth hanging from it. And just as an example of how amazingly detailed this action figure is, the loincloth is layered. The top layer is the metallic part is plastic, and then there's a next layer that looks like the pelt of an animal, and then the layer underneath looks like some jagged, torn, frayed cloth. And all three layers are completely different material and texture. All the pebbly, rocky parts are sculpted and painted very well. The bracer and the belt have that aged, hammered metal look, and the rest of the uh, skin, the rest of the hide, is gray and pink. Even the bottom of the troll's three-toed feet are textured and have details sculpted into them. The troll's body is broad and very muscular and covered in the same rocky warts and spikes and all that scaly stuff. You can see that it's it has a little bit of a belly. The belly is overhanging the top of the belt, like it got a bit of a punch going on. I wouldn't really call this troll fat. I mean, calling a giant troll fat is rude and very dangerous. Don't want to piss it off. Uh, but it definitely looks like a very well-fed troll, which, when you think about it, is a kind of a scary thing to think about because they supposedly eat human. So a well-fed troll means a troll that eaten a lot of human. Being a very big, very solid character, the troll does not have as many joints as your usual action figures. However, this troll is still jointed enough to pull off some scary looking troll poses. You can move the head, the shoulders, the bicep, the arm can bend, although you can't really get a 90-degree bend. Most of the movement you'll get out of him is in the hips and in the shoulders. But the advantage is being such a big and heavy figure, he stands really well. I mean, look at it. Even with such a massive hammer in his hand, he still stands fine without falling over. That is one good bit of engineering right there. Perfect balance, perfect proportion. In addition to being really big and very detailed, very well made, and come with a really big weapon, the troll also comes with two head options. One is one that we have on the troll right now. This is a closed, the mouth is closed, and you can see the tusk poking out from the lower jaw. I think of this as a more neutral, more I am not very pissed off. I'm not very hungry. I am kind of at peace with the world. Look. Or we have a different head option. This is what I would say is I'm going to eat you right now head. You can see that it's not the same troll with a different expression. This is a completely different species of troll once you put its head on. It still has a pointy ear, but the long nose is gone. It has a flat nose. The head has almost like a skull shape, and we're seeing a lot of teeth. The mouth is slightly open, and now the tusk, rather than coming out from the lower jaw pointing up, now the tusks point forward like the tusk on a wild boar. This is definitely the more ferocious of the two heads. So if you have enough money to get two of these species, you can actually display them as two different kinds of trolls, which is really quite cool. And just to give a sense of scale, we have what would amount to a normal dude. This is Legolas, the elf from Lord of the Rings. Now, Legolas is yeah, it's about normal human warrior size, maybe a little bit taller than average, and pretty lean, but definitely within the realm of normality with a human-sized action figure. We have Legolas standing in front of the troll, and we can really see how big of a difference there is between these two action figures. I mean, uh, yeah, you can imagine brave, brave, uh, intelligent Legolas just minding his own business, suddenly coming across something like this stone troll. Yeah, that would be kind of scary. The troll is like 5 times the size of Legolas. Not exactly in the height department, although he definitely looms over Legolas, but in every which way, thicker, wider. One of his, a single one of his arm is bigger than Legolas' entire body. So yeah, this is definitely not a contest that can be won in a close quarter combat between these two. And here is poor Legolas being held in the grasp of the troll, just about to get eaten. Now, think about this for a second. This is a 12-inch action figure holding up a 6-inch action figure and still able to stand no problem unassisted. This is quite amazing already. And then we have the troll lifting Legolas up in one hand while getting ready to bash his head in with a hammer in the other hand. So now we have a 12-inch action figure who is very heavy already, holding up a 6-inch action figure in one hand while holding up a giant hammer that is about 10, 11 inches long in the other hand, and he is still standing unassisted. This is really, really good work. Uh, if you guys see my past action figure review, you've seen how unstable a lot of action figures are. So it is amazing that the Four Horsemen can get this good of a body mechanic into a giant brute of a troll like this. So in the end, uh, we have a troll that can be displayed in many different options. It's big and hefty and comes with a gigantic weapon. And so far in the entire uh, action figure industry, in the entire history of the past 20 years of action figure making, there has never been anything that can match this troll when it comes to making an troll action figure of a troll. So, is it an expensive action figure? Totally is. Is it worth every penny? Totally is. If I see this on pre-order again, would I get another one? I totally will. That is how much I'm amazed by this uh, gigantic brute of an action figure. So I hope that this has been enjoyable. Next week we are going to start our October horror action figure month, where we'll be looking at some rather disturbing and scary stuff. And tomorrow we should be back with some Fitness Friday, although I got a karaoke party Kitten and I we are attending. So who knows? Who knows? We'll see. If we don't get around to it tomorrow, we'll make it up to you guys on Saturday. For now, have a good night.